Hello, and thank you so much for joining me on Climate Check. I'm your host, Mary Mwikisa. Now, this is a show designed to propel climate action in Zambia. And of course, there is no climate action without climate finance. And so today on the program, we will be talking about climate finance that is meant to go towards adaptation, mitigation, and creating resilience, and also compensating loss and damage as a result of climate-induced disasters. Also on the program, we will be understanding more about the weather, what is happening to our weather. This is December and it's getting very hot by the day. And so the Minister of Green Economy and Environment recently held a press briefing where he explained the heat waves that we're experiencing, and he spoke about the fact that from the 1st of December to the 12th, we will be experiencing a lot of heat, especially in the valleys, and also reduced rain activity in various parts of the country. And so we'll be hosting the Meteorological Department on the program to explain further what this means for various sectors of the economy. Also on the program, we'll be understanding more about the best way to manage plastic waste. This is Climate Check. Join me on the other side. Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi, just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. Welcome back to Climate Check. Remember, this program is brought to you courtesy of HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. And now, to start our conversation, we focus on climate finance. Now, recently, the world held the Climate Change Conference, the Conference of Parties 29th edition, also known as COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, where the developing countries, together with other least developed countries, were not very happy with the outcome, the financial outcome specifically, because only a $300 billion agreement was arrived against the new collective quantified goal of $1.3 trillion. And so what are we going to do as a country to ensure that we still go ahead with our climate action activities? And so I'll be hosting very, very shortly, I'll be talking to Mr. Susi Kunasinda, who is a climate change finance expert, and will be giving us more information about climate finance. Join me on the other side as I speak with him. Thank you so much for making time, and it's always a pleasure to host you on the program.
Thank you, Mary. You're most welcome. Such a delight to be back on Climate Check.
Talk to me about your work at Ernst & Young. What do you do exactly?
Well, Ernst & Young is a global accounting and advisory firm. Okay. I work in the Climate Change and Sustainability Services unit, okay, which basically focuses on providing advisory services around climate, around sustainability, and around energy as well.
It's interesting to see that most of these accounting firms have got a component or a unit that focuses on climate change. So it shows a lot of zeal for climate action. Absolutely.
The Pulse of Business responds to what is happening in the global space.
Yes.
Right now, the world is facing a catastrophe, basically, around climate. And when you sit at global meetings such as the COP, you get to appreciate the magnitude of the problem that we are facing.
Yeah.
And so it requires organizations like ourselves to be able to respond, to support government, to support private businesses, to be able to manage their climate as well as sustainability ambitions.
Let's not talk about money. There's no climate action without finance, and especially for developing countries, this is the hallmark of climate action. There's no adaptation that you can talk about if you don't have the funding to adapt to new technologies, new ways of living. COP29 was a disappointment for most developing countries, the least developed countries, the Africa Group of Negotiators, as well as the G77 China Cooperation. And against the new quantified collective goal of $1.3 trillion demand, what was galvanized was $300 billion. And we were told this money will be dispersed over a period of 10 years, and it's a top-up to the earlier $100 billion that was not fulfilled. So in short, they're topping up at 200 to make it $300 billion. What do you make of this coming from a developing country?
The climate problem has got different facets. The important thing to understand is that the greatest emitters are the global north or the developed countries. Through the process of industrialization, through their developmental ambitions, they get to emit carbon, which is a problem for this world. Most of this carbon is coming from burning of fossil fuels, such as coal, such as oil, as well as extraction of gas and its utilization in business and economic operations. And for us as Africa, we have not contributed significantly to this problem. Africa only accounts for about 4% of global emissions on greenhouse gases. And despite having a small contribution, Africa remains highly vulnerable. So through the Paris Agreement, it compels developing countries to be able to provide financing towards developing countries in Africa and elsewhere for them to manage their adaptation as well as mitigation programs. So going into COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan, the world was seeking to develop a new collective quantitative goal, which is basically a global goal that is commensurate, a global finance goal that is commensurate to the climate challenge that we are having, to be able to raise the finances that will prevent the world from going into crisis mode. So as it stands currently, the world is off track. So we are off track in terms of achieving net zero by 2050, in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and as well as combating climate change. What that means is that should we continue in this business as usual approach, the world will face more severe climate impacts. So the drought that we have seen in Zambia today, if the world continues with the lack of action in terms of providing climate finance for adaptation and mitigation, it means that the subsequent floods as well as droughts that may come in the next 5 or 10 years will be more severe and will have far-reaching impacts. So with regards to 300 out of 1.3 billion, representing basically about 23%, the outcry is that this amount of money is a drop in the ocean. It is not sufficient to be able to help developing countries like Zambia to meet its climate goals. So how do you respond? Because when you get feedback from such a big platform as the COP in such a manner, it means that you need to go back to the drawing board as countries to be able to review your strategies and come up with other ways that would help the nation to be able to progress. And this is where the issue of bilateral agreements come in, rather than looking to the COP to be able to compel the Western world to bring in those finances. We can strengthen our bilateral relations with key partners. And when you look at the COP, there were some key developments around carbon markets, Article 6, 6.4, 6.2. And Zambia went in at full throttle to be able to sign 3 key agreements with Norway, with Sweden, as well as Singapore. And those are the kind of relationships that Zambia must leverage. So what's important is for these conversations to continue, to be scaled up with aggression. And I know that the Ministry of Green Economy is already playing a very proactive role in this area. So there's need for more collaboration among key stakeholders, the traditional leaders, the Ministry of Green Economy, other key ministries like the Ministry of Energy as well, coming in together to bring awareness about what opportunities and risks are out there. Because as you might be aware, the carbon space, for example, is not an easy space. It's very easy for local communities not to benefit from these projects. And once traditional leaders are involved through awareness and through education, they will be able to identify which is a good proposal and which one is not, which one is the correct price and which one is not. And this is where the Zambian government, I think, has been very proactive through the Ministry of Green Economy in ensuring that policy is developed around carbon credits and also climate change in general.
Mr. Nasinda, thank you so much for making time to come to Climate Check, and thank you for the opportunity to hear from you.
You're welcome. Thanks, and it's been a pleasure to be here with you.
Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. You're on Climate Check, and right about now, I am joined in studio by Madam Peggy Tole, who is from the Meteorological Department, and she is here to talk to us all things the weather. What is happening to our weather, and also what does this mean for the farmers? What does this mean for the health sector? What does it mean for you and I? Let's find out what is happening to our weather as I speak to her in a short while. Welcome back to Climate Check. We now focus on all things the weather. And of course, we know that the Minister of Green Economy and Environment, Honorable Mike Mposha MP, recently held a press briefing where he announced the fact that from the 1st of December to the 12th, we will be experiencing high temperatures and reduced rainfall activity in most parts of the country. And joining us from the Meteorological Department under the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment is Senior Meteorologist, Madam Peggy Tole. Thank you so much for joining us on Climate Check.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
All right, now let's understand the weather. What is happening now? Many people are not very happy with you, Madam Peggy, and your team because they're expecting that when they drive out, there'll be water everywhere, but it's hot.
Okay.
What's causing this heat that the minister spoke about? What is influencing this heat?
Okay, thank you very much. As you may know, summer is not just rain throughout. Summer is also characterized with high temperatures. Okay. So it's these high temperatures that also help enhance the rainfall. So what we have currently is a deep low pressure system. That is, a low pressure system is a system that usually attracts heat. Okay. So that's why we've been seeing these high temperatures. We saw that up to, say, Friday, the temperatures got too high, such that over the weekend we saw some rainfall activities.
Yes.
On Sunday, we had some heavy pours reported in some parts of the country. And the high temperatures also saw some areas like Mfuwe reporting 43 degrees Celsius, which was quite very high. Yes. 43?
Yes. Okay. Let's have a look at some of the weather presentations that you have. Let's have a look and have you explain what is going on. And especially that now, like right now as we're talking, there's a bit of rains happening, but some other parts of the country are still experiencing the heat, especially as people in Siavonga, they're saying it's still very hot.
Yes. Yeah, as you know, spatially, rainfall cannot be like the same everywhere. Even the weather is quite different in different parts. Yeah. So from this, I can just try to look at what we've experienced so far from 1st October to 5th December, the amounts of rainfall that we've received so far. We can see that for the northern parts there, those are the areas that have received sufficient amounts of rainfall.
That's the green part.
In deep green, yes.
Okay, the deep green. Okay.
Yes. Those areas have received more than 250 millimeters since 1st October. Then we have the other areas in green, that is around 150 to 250 millimeters. Then we see the southern half where we have the yellow and the brown color. The yellow is indicating rainfall amounts of 100 to 150 millimeters. Those are cumulative amounts. Then we have the extreme southern parts there, which is covering mainly southern province, much of western, Lusaka, and some parts of central and eastern provinces there. Those areas have received less than 100 millimeters since the season started. That's 1st October to 5th December.
Okay.
This doesn't account for the rainfall that we had over the weekend and the rains that we had today.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. And what does it look like now going forward?
Okay. Maybe just to look at the next
The
map.
next slide, yes.
Yes. What we can see is that we're trying to look at the anomaly. That's the difference from the average they're supposed to receive. You can see that some areas, even if they receive too much rainfall, a lot of rainfall, still that is below their average. I can cite an example of Mwinilunga there. You can see the brown areas.
Yes, I was about to ask. Yes, the brown parts.
Yeah, so the brown parts are showing deficits in amounts of rainfall. So we see that Mwinilunga already has a deficit of more than 50 millimeters of rainfall, including those areas in brown. But for those in green, that is mainly covering the northern parts and eastern, those areas have received sufficient amounts, which is above the average that they're expected to receive as at 5th December. And they are in excess of more than 50 millimeters of rainfall.
Okay.
Yes.
Can we have a look at the next one and understand exactly what it is implying? Yeah.
Okay. So now this is now the response of the soil moisture to the amount of rainfall that we've received.
Okay.
So for this map, we can see the lighter purple and the brown areas indicating to say that there is no sufficient moisture in those areas. The brown areas are actually indicating if there were crops there, they must be wilting around this time. Yes.
Okay.
And
It's dry.
It's dry, yes.
Okay.
And for the purple areas, they're indicating that if there are crops there, then they are water stressed.
Okay.
So generally on this picture, we can see that only the northern parts where they are in deep purple, that's where we have sufficient soil moisture.
Okay.
But this doesn't also add up to the amount of rainfall that we've received today and the one we received yesterday. The picture may be different after these 2 days because the response of the soil moisture tends to increase quite quickly than the amount of rainfall.
Okay.
So we expect.
So this information
better
is very
information.
important for the farmers, especially because they need to know when to plant, depending on where they are located. So it's not one shoe fits all.
No, actually it's area specific. It depends on your area, how much rainfall you've received and how much soil moisture has been kept in the soil. That's why usually we have these agriculture extension officers trying to monitor also the soil moisture and trying to advise the farmers accordingly to say that, okay, now we have sufficient moisture, and then coupled with the forecast in the coming days, they can look at, are we having the rains or not? Then they can be able to advise the farmers.
Okay.
So this picture here now is giving us a satellite picture showing the amount of rainfall we received yesterday, how spread the rainfall was. We can see that it was quite widespread. We had a lot of cloudy weather conditions.
That's the blue part?
Blue
the dark
and
blue, is it deep blue?
Yes, the blue going into yellow and red,
Yes.
those are areas that received rainfall.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay.
So this was a satellite captured last night, and we saw that most parts of the country, at least they had a share of some rainfall amounts. Yes, some would have received very little amounts, but others received quite some heavy amounts.
Okay.
Yes.
And when do we see the rains, like the way we know the rainy season, like, oh, it will rain at least 4 times out of 7 days, like you would see frequent rain for every other day or every 2 days?
Yeah. Yeah, this takes me now to the forecast.
Okay.
So what we are forecasting, like from 9th to 15th December, that is today up to 15th, we are not seeing much of the rains covering the southern and western parts. Those are the areas in white on the map on the left.
Okay.
Most of the heavier rains are to the north where we have the green and blue shadings. But we see a great improvement from 6th to 22nd December.
Okay.
There we'll have some good rains covering most parts of the country, and you can see the amounts expected are exceeding 30 millimeters of rainfall. So we are seeing the rain settling around that time, around 16th, 22nd. We see most parts of the country receiving sufficient rainfall amounts.
Okay.
Yes, we had these little amounts that have been experienced, quite isolated, but after 16th, we see some widespread kind of rainfall.
Okay. So there's hope after all.
Yes, there's hope.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is your word to members of the public on the weather updates?
Yeah, to the members of public, actually, I would advise them to be following our updates. We have the daily weather updates, we have the 7-day weather updates, and we also have the agro-meteorological bulletins, which are produced every 10 days.
Okay.
Those have got quite some wide information, especially to the farming community. Those farming communities are able to be given advisories. That bulletin is produced in collaboration with Ministry of Agriculture, and there what happens is that collaboration tries to package the information, the weather information, together
Yes.
with agricultural information. And this also include the livestock and fisheries information.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for making time to join us.
Thank you so
and
much.
for explaining what is going on with our weather.
Thank you so much.
Now imagine if trees could provide Wi-Fi. Just how many trees you would plant? Well, they provide oxygen. We definitely cannot do without it. Destruction of nature, such as forests, has led to irreversible climatic changes to our world. Join me as I talk to policy formulators, change makers, and climate change interest groups on Climate Check, weekly on this channel. Now you are the solution to climate change. This is Climate Check, brought to you by HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. And of course, having understood more about the weather, now you are able to go about your daily activities. And remember what the Meteorological Department always tell us, check out the daily weather updates. Don't depend on last week's weather forecast because it changes every single day. And so let's pay attention to the weather updates to be able to plan our days effectively. Right now, let's join our staffer, Dominic Davis Chifumbe, who gives us this report on the best way to manage plastic waste. And this is in partnership with a project that was launched, which is called Kusanka Project, and it is being supported by the Norwegian Church Aid. Just take a look.
Plastic pollution is a pressing challenge in Zambia, echoing a global environmental crisis that demands immediate attention. With an estimated 80,000 metric tons of plastic waste generated annually in the country, only 10% of this plastic waste is collected and properly disposed of, leaving the remaining 90% to contaminate the environment. However, in order to raise awareness and promote responsible waste management, the Norwegian Church Aid launched the Kusanka pilot project, which aims to establish a scalable and sustainable waste system. Green Earth Solutions Chairman Edwin Matokwani says the Kusanka pilot project is a transformative initiative designed to address Zambia's critical waste management.
By fostering multi-stakeholder collaboration, the Kusanka pilot project aims to establish a scalable and sustainable waste management system that promotes environmental stewardship and economic inclusion. To raise awareness and promote responsible waste management practices through activities such as waste separation at the source in the pilot areas.
He emphasized the need to reach out to communities through enhanced public awareness.
To enhance recycling rates and reduce plastic pollution, fostering a circular economy. To educate communities on waste segregation, recycling and sustainable waste management practices.
And Norwegian Church Aid Country Director Jonathan Lee Howarth has called on government to expedite the process of paying extra for the use of plastic bottle products and hold producers of the products responsible through the Extended Producer Responsibility EPR.
We need the government to say enough is enough. We are making this mandatory. Every person that wants to sell a bottle like this will have to pay to sell that bottle towards the EPR, and they will pass that on to the consumer, and that's fine because it's a tiny amount of money and we can afford it. If we want our Manzi Valley, if we want our Coca-Cola, if we want our other things that come wrapped in plastic, we'll pay that tiny bit of extra money, knowing that we're doing the right thing for the environment by doing so.
The common phrase is reduce, reuse and recycle in order to protect the environment. Dominic Davis Chifumbe reporting in Lusaka.
We have come to the end of this week's edition of Climate Check. Thank you so much for making time to join us on the program. Remember, the show is brought to you courtesy HIVOS Southern Africa with its alliance partners on the VCA project. My name is Mary Mwikisa. Thank you for watching. Do take care of the planet wherever you are. Goodbye.